Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Polyhedron Cast episode 118. I'm Steve Tudor.
I'm Andy Lewis.
I'm Sid Gill.
I'm Rory J. Summers.
I'm excited, boys.
What are you excited?
You're excited?
about?
You're excited?
I'm excited because this weekend, and this will be actually the weekend after this podcast goes out, but this weekend is Tabletop Gaming Live.
Oh,
It
yes.
is.
It is.
Are you going?
But I'm not excited for that because I'm going to a beer festival. I'm dead excited because I haven't been to a beer festival in years.
You're going. We are going to break you, wizard.
We were so close. We were so close to starting the podcast on a positive board gaming related note there, and it just went out.
Ridiculous.
Steve lulling us all into a false sense of security there.
Have you seen the show notes? There's about 5 bullet points before you get close to board gaming.
What? Yeah, okay.
To be fair, if any other weekend, I think it would have gone to Tabletop Gaming Live, but it was just, this weekend was just oh, I've already got this in the calendar. And going to Birmingham for a few hours is going to be a lot easier to, get me ticket stamped than going all the way to Manchester
For the day.
Yes.
for the whole day. Yeah.
True.
I did have a look. I don't think I could. I'd have to do it on a Sunday, which is a shorter day of the convention, and it's 5 hours driving for 6 hours there.
That's not really worth it.
It's just,
It's not worth it, is it?
Come to the Birmingham Beer Festival with us. PHC day out.
Will they have cider? I'm not really a beer man.
I don't know. Probably.
I think it's not worth the gamble.
They do have Princess Petrol though for the real connoisseur among us.
They have what? Sorry.
Princess Petrol.
What exactly is Princess Petrol?
Fizzy plonk.
Princess Petrol's I call cheap rosé.
Right. Okay.
I applied to more liberally than Mr. Tudor and applied to any kind of fizzy sparkling wine or whatever the heck it is.
Pish.
Well, beer festival.
Basically drinks for ladies
Ladies.
who then get very drunk on it. Hence petrol.
Fair enough.
Nice. Straightforward. So yeah, Sunday we're going to be in quite a lot of pain.
I wasn't very healthy last time I went, put it that way, the day after.
I do like the way that I've seen on the chat as well that you two are optimistic you might get a board game in on Sunday.
I have knocked that on the head.
He has knocked that, and to be fair, I was like, yeah, I'll suggest it as a courtesy because he's like in the area. But really, I'm hoping.
Well, I might not even be in the area. I've still not decided whether I'm going to do that or not because Malvern is kind of outward way.
But you see, I've extended the invitation now, and you've done the courteous man thing and said, "Nah, it's all right. I'll head home." So I'm now feel like I've done my honourable thing. Mrs. G's happy that I've extended the invitation because you were in the area. Everybody has played the political game, and everyone is now happy that we can all just stay in our beds, in our pants.
What's now going to happen is we're going to get drunk on Saturday and go, yeah, I'll come back to Malvern.
I bet you do.
We shall see. Watch this space. A drunk game or even a hungover game might get played.
Yeah, we shall see. We shall see.
Yeah, we tried that last time. It didn't work out for me.
It didn't work out well, did it?
It worked out brilliantly for me.
Tudor wiped the floor with us.
That's why he wiped the floor with us, because we were not on our game. That's what it was.
So what else have you guys been up to?
We've been on our travels. We've had a PHC road trip.
Ooh,
That's
exciting times.
Cool.
It's exciting times for me and Andy. So we, in the middle of August, were in Scotland, and per happen chance, it was Tabletop Scotland.
Some might say that was the reason we went up in the first place, but still,
I'm still maintaining it's to see my mum and dad, but the Tabletop Scotland might be a strong driver. But yes, so Andy and I went to Tabletop Scotland in Perth at the DWARS Centre.
The DWARS Centre. Oh, that's me.
Yeah, that's
you
me.
You might have to cut that one, or I might get my balls cut off.
Oh no, we're keeping it. We're keeping
it.
It turns out that Alora is sometimes not the best at Scottish, the pronunciation of certain Scottish words, and it's rather than pronouncing the venue as the Dewars Centre adequately, she mistakenly pronounced it as the Dewar Centre, which I was suitably confused at hearing this day. I thought, what? Where the fuck is that? So I had a look at it. Oh, the Dewar Centre. Right, okay. So it is now forever known as the Dewar Centre.
Dewar Centre, fair enough.
And Sid and I are now in a lot of trouble as she's giggling. But it was excellent. It was very, very good.
Fantastic show. It really was.
Yeah, really. It's bloody warm though.
It was cozy, but at least we could get the side doors open to get the nice smell of the local drug dealer's hash drift in through the game every now and then.
That was a nice addition to the ambiance.
I'll tell you what though, interesting, since you mentioned bad smells, the weekend that you were there, Andy, I was in your neck of the woods at the safari park round the corner, trying not to breathe in the smell of giraffe and rhino shit. I'd driven all the way to your neck of the woods, and I was like, just round the corner from Andy. And of course, you were in Scotland.
I was in Scotland, so not really round the corner.
Not really round the corner.
Hey, at least your car didn't get peed in. Last time I was at the safari park, an open-topped car, a sunroof was open, and a giraffe straddled the car and peed inside.
That's epic.
The panic in the car in front of us was just amazing. But back to Scotland.
How was the convention? How was this board game convention, which we managed to not talk about?
It was very, very good, because Duncan's been trying to sort of get me up there for quite a few years now, but for whatever reason, I've not been able to go. Partly because the last couple of years, obviously, it's been COVID and we couldn't go. It was used as a vaccination centre, so they had to call it off for a couple of years. And then the years before that, there's been a bank holiday. We've been doing something or whatever. Anyway, so we go up there, and it was fun. The format really was kind of like for those of you who have been to Aircon and Expo, hopefully both, it was kind of a cross between those two things. So the format was mostly open gaming. So it was primarily a gaming convention. Folk meet up, play games, wave the flags around. And one thing they did really well, actually, which I've not seen at any other convention, so any other conventioners listening could take heed from this, from Tabletop Scotland's lead. And you know how the little flags you can get, or the balloons that say, players wanted? They also have ones that say teachers wanted. So there's people who get games at the library and don't know how to play the game, or they're a bit unsure. And if there are people around who have seen the game and played it before, they can sit down and teach that game rather than people sort of muddle away through the game for a couple of hours. They can get through it, in 20 minutes and get on with the game. And I thought that was a really great idea.
So, quick question. When they have is it literally a balloon, or is it like a flaggy type?
It's a flag. It's a flag.
And is there a little bulldog clip so you can clip the box, the lid of the box, so people know it's teachers wanted and you want me to teach you Small World, and I can see that from a distance? Or do I have to walk all the way up to your table?
You can see the flag.
You want me to teach you the gallerist, and I haven't got a clue.
Yeah, well, you can see the flag. I don't know, because I don't think it was ever used. Or at least I don't remember.
No, I saw a couple. I saw a couple being used, but it was the same as the players wanted sign. The box lid was on the table by the flag.
So it was face up. You could see it.
You can see it.
It wasn't like a pedestal upon which you could stick it, Rory. You know, come on.
Well, I'm just thinking, if there was a flag, you'd have like a bulldog clip, like affixed to the thing, so you could just clip the lid of the box underneath the flag.
That would damage the box, and that would make us very sad.
Do you know what? It's a bloody good idea, and people should take it.
You just a bit of foam on the bulldog clip, you'd be fine. It doesn't have to be very strong. Yeah.
There you go. A PHC top tip.
There you go.
But there were also a fair few stalls, so a bit like Expo, but much scaled down. So there were a few vendors, sort of sellers of games. So generally what TTS have tried to do is keep it local. So they favour, Scottish or, Perthshire and Ayrshire and that kind of region, sellers and demoers and things like that to try and stimulate a bit of local colour, and it worked quite well. We were having a good chat with Dave, who was one of the primary folks of organising it, running around like a blue arse fly all weekend. But he seemed to be enjoying himself. So we had a really good chat with Dave about some feedback, how we felt about it. We really enjoyed it. A couple of things that we thought that maybe could be improved, but they were all basically personal opinions, very very minor. Gripe. So overall, the show was excellent. We attended a demonstration for a game called Midhalla. So it was a Viking-y kind of game, which was essentially a Euro dungeon crawler type of thing. So
that sounds like an odd mix.
Yeah, it was actually quite reminiscent of the game Steve and I played a couple of years ago. You know, Steve, with the sort of rotational action thing.
Oh, with the
That.
What the devil was that called?
I can't remember.
No, never can I.
No, it was a few years ago, but it didn't have that sort of rotationally dially thing. What it happened was you have a character sheet or player board, and it has, I think, 3 rows of actions, and you can pick. You basically have 2 actions, and every now and again you can invoke a special action, but you can only use it like once per scenario. So the idea is an ongoing story campaign, and each scenario you've got to try and defend an area or explore and protect the gate from beasties. And there's this gate basically where there's this sort of big gribbly that's been sort of hidden behind and protected, and you know there's all these wards and stuff, and the little gribblies you're trying to kill are trying to break down these wards and release the big bad. So it's obviously your job to stop that. And in doing so, there are little gribblies that spawn, and there are things like kobolds and goblins and the various flavours thereof. And your characters have obviously got to keep them at bay. Now, because it's a Euro version, it means that there are no dice. So everything is very deterministic. So you know you're going to do so much damage to an enemy, but you also know they're going to do so much damage to you, or the thing that they have a primary target on. Yeah. So you can it's more of a strategy game than anything else, because you know exactly what the enemies are going to do, and you know exactly what you can do to the enemies. So whilst we found it interesting, I don't think it works. Because for me, this is only my personal opinion, I think part of the fun of dungeon crawlers is the unknown, i.e. the dice rolls and the random chance that makes it exciting. You know, you pull off a coup. Oh my God, we're going to go up a big gribbly, roll lots of dice. We're probably going to die. Oh my God, no, we've killed it. Brilliant. Or you go, ha, it's only a kobold and I've got a whacking great warhammer, and you completely fluff your roll and get smacked in the face by, a little rat or something. And that to me is kind of part and parcel of what dungeon crawler's about. By taking that out, it made it a bit dull.
Yeah, I suppose it all becomes quite calculable.
Well, it's exactly that. It's algorithm.
Yeah,
at that point.
You walk in and go, right, I can calculate that the next 3 turns we're going to win, so let's just win now.
I mean, to be fair to it, there was randomness involved. I mean, the way that the baddies would come out and where they would end up and that kind of stuff, that was random. But once they were out, they would move around the board in a predefined algorithm, and they would take their actions at a predetermined time, and you could factor your actions in to fit with that to maximize your chance of playing out. You know, to the point where you would say, well, let's not fight that baddie because he's actually no danger to me for 2 more turns. Yeah. I'll go and fight this other guy because he's the one that's going to cause me the most grief at the moment. And it's, you know, it felt artificial. It felt like you could go past the baddie, which felt wrong in a dungeon crawler.
Well, you
could literally walk past it. You could just literally dingy this baddie off and walk past him and go and deal with the next one down the road. Because the guy was unable to attack you, and all he was interested in was walking past you to, I don't know, wail on the gate or whatever it was. It just felt a bit wrong. It was weird. I kind of enjoyed it though. And that's what's bothering me about it.
Yeah, because it was
fun to play. It was fun to play, and that it was different, but it didn't quite feel right.
Yeah,
maybe it was just challenging our assumptions around a dungeon crawler, but it was odd.
I think the appeal of it is the fact that it was cripplingly difficult, so you are kind of compelled to replay it to try and solve it. If that makes sense. Because the enemies would spawn in a different place every time you played it. It's not a predetermined dungeon, so it is slightly random, as Sid says. But I think, to me, it's not something that I would probably do again, because I would find it just a little bit too formulaic. I think there isn't quite enough randomness in there to make it fun.
I think once you work out how to win, you will be able to apply your winning algorithm without fail.
I think that's probably a fair assessment. Yeah.
Yeah. Once you've worked out the solution to the puzzle, that solution's always going to work. Yeah.
And when you've worked out the baddie, or when you've worked out that this person is if you hit him first, you will always win, kind of thing. It didn't feel like it would play for too long, in my opinion. Whereas a dungeon crawler to me is you pull it out every time you have a blast with your pals and you get through it. It's always a bit different.
Exactly.
That's what it should be.
Now, it's fair to say that every map would be different every time, because obviously you're setting up every different every time, and there's lots of different maps, and there's lots of different sort of ways through the game. So it's kind of like Tainted Grail light in that sort of sense. But yeah, it's I think it's out on Kickstarter later this year for anyone who's into that kind of thing. So, but that's
probably give it a shout out again.
Yeah. So there'll be a reminder. That's Midhalla. But what else did we do in TTS? We did. We had a look round. We saw there was actually a sort of 48-hour, although not constant, RPG room.
Yes, we did.
Which was in dire need of some deodorant afterwards. But they did mix it up a lot. So it wasn't just D&D. There were loads of different types of RPG systems being played around the top floor, and they had a kind of a linked D&D session. Where they'd sort of created a kind of a long one shot, and events in one game would affect the other games. So there were sort of timed sort of incidents that would happen in each of these games, and it would be up to the rest of the other parties around the room in order to try and sort of deal with the fallout of each of those things. We weren't there to see how it happened and what exactly those incidents were, but from what Dave was telling me, it sounded like it was pretty good. And everybody up there was seemed to be enjoying themselves, so that was good.
It was good to see a lot of actually the non-D&D RPGs. There was a lot of non-D&D RPG being played.
Oh yeah, mostly non-RPG.
Mostly there was an absolute buttload of Free League. There was loads of Pathfinder. There was really old games. Traveller was out and about.
Yes, that's true.
There was a bunch of stuff, real big bunch of stuff that looked really exciting, and I kind of wanted to play as them, but.
Yes,
2 days just wasn't enough, really.
No,
if I'm honest, to hit, because we couldn't really devote the half day or the couple of hours to play some. But maybe next time.
It went quick as well. No, I mean, there's never enough time at these things. So,
No.
But it. We did enjoy it. We actually got, to be fair, we got quite a lot of games played. Unlike all the other conventions we've been at so far, and we take like one or two bags full of games that we've got. Yes, we're going to play all of these games, and you never do. You maybe play two of them. We actually got through all but I think two of the games we took, which was pretty good, including some hefty ones and some lighter ones and some sort of middle of the road ones. So good.
and we found some surprises, some from the library, which we thought were.
We did
actually very, very good. So
yes.
All things being equal, I think we had a very good couple of days up there, and I think our thanks must go to the organisers.
Yes,
Dave especially for welcoming us so generously.
Mm-hmm.
It was a bloody good show. It really was.
It really was. Yes, we'll be going again next year. I think that's.
I think we're going to have.
They'll have us back.
So the burning question then, gents. What food did you spill down yourselves?
Well,
now. So, on this occasion, there was a small on-site cafe, but there were no sophisticated food trucks such as you are accustomed to at the expo. However, the entirety of the metropolis that is Perth is at your behest. And so, we had a couple of, Dr. Lewis had a dirty haggis supper.
Of course I did. I had to get that in me.
And we found a nice little noodle bar, which was the densest, heaviest pot of noodles I think I've ever carried around in my life.
That was probably the closest we came to Sid throwing it all down himself, because he got like a sort of noodle with a bunch of soup in, and he spent most of his time trying to basically keep it in the container to stop it pissing out everywhere. So his hand got completely covered. But they loaded this noodle pot so full he couldn't shut the lid. So he's walking down the street trying to balance this thing. Without throwing it everywhere. That was entertaining. That was a fun game in itself.
Quite amusing. But no, it was very different. We got a lot more takeaway food from various places. sandwiches and whatnot from the restaurant. We found that you could sneak across the road to the Majestic Wine House and have a bit of air conditioning, which was bliss.
Oh, it was lovely. Oh, God, yes.
Oh,
An
wow.
entire wine warehouse that was air conditioned. We were like, can we just stay in here for a little bit?
Oh, we did stay in there for a little bit, to be fair.
we did, on a booze run.
But no, Rory, I think this time we all managed to keep the stains off our T-shirts.
All right. No need for the PHC bib. Good stuff.
Nope, not this time. Not this time. So yeah, overall, a very good show. Very
highly
enjoyable.
recommend it. Really good atmosphere. There's actually one thing I do think we need to point out, which I thought was actually very, very good, and that was the amount of space. So when we were so the way it was laid out, it's in the ice rink, basically, the Dewar Centre, the ice rink where the curling and stuff happens, and the Christmas ice rink is on. And it's 2 big rooms, 2 big halls. And the open gaming had so much, like a fantastic amount of space between the rows. So you could move your chair back and you could then get out of your chair and you still had space to walk down the aisle.
Not bosh into anyone. Nice.
It was immense. It was fantastic. And we
2.5 meters, Dave, proudly
2.5 meters, yeah. It was brilliant, honestly. You never felt claustrophobic. And it was always, it had the right kind of feel of busyness as well. So it was always kind of people going around, but you could always find a couple of chairs amongst people. A few bags might have to get moved around, but you always got a little spot to park yourself. It was really good. I really enjoyed myself.
Yes, it was nicely full. There was always space, but it always felt like there was, it was pretty full. So it was good. It was a really nice balance. They've done really well getting it just so. Yeah. So yeah, definitely worth going. So if you are up in the area, or even if you're not, go and check it out. And yeah, we shall hopefully see you next year.
Definitely.
So, highlights for the news since we last brought you a podcast is that our good friend Fyrnwest is now like the head honcho at Gamma. So, that's congratulations, Frank. I think we need to raise a glass to you, sir.
Well deserved.
Yeah. And the other piece of board gaming news, which nearly made me wet my pants when I saw it yesterday, was that Brotherwise Games are doing some Brandon Sanderson Stomrlight archive minis, which I exclaimed into our PHC group chat, the one with 2 gingers in, and there's
only one ginger in that chat.
No, there's me and Steve in that one.
No, he's only a pretend ginger now. Plastic ginger he is.
Ginger.
Stomrlight archive minis, which I was hoping it was going to be a game, but it looks like they're just minis and little statuettes.
So I looked at these minis and I don't think their own advertisement does them much good, because the first thing they show off is this kind of like polythene kind of standees, which are not the minis, they're slightly bigger, and it's like for selling minis, the kind of vinyl, isn't it? It looks like a pop vinyl. Ooh. It doesn't look very good, but they're not the minis, which is the main thing, which is a bit weird.
And they're not a game either, and it's just like...
And they're not a game. Well, I did wonder as well, looking through it, how would you make a game? Because it's all the heroes. There's none of the actual villains in there, so I don't know how you do a game anyway. Anyway, they look quite nice minis, but I think with you, if it had been a game,
all over
that, more interested.
I'm dying for a decent Stomrlight archive game.
Well, there's that one we played in that game cafe in Cube, didn't we? Is it the Cube? No, in Leamington.
Oh, that's based on the Reckoners.
Yeah, we played Steelheart based on the Reckoners. Yeah, which was a bit.
That's different, is it? Okay.
Yeah. He's got a few, and we've also played Mistborn House War at Steve's house years ago, and that's really boring. that is one of my most expensive Kickstarters I've ever backed, and it is the most disappointing.
Oh well, you can answer one of the questions later on with that.
Oh, okay, right. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
Cool your jets. Okay. Cool your jets. Right then. Well, we've already actually started the whole format for today's episode.
We've completely ignored the show notes.
Because the show, we've got the show notes kind of in an arc, but we talked about a game in the banter. We haven't really talked about news. So, hang on, why don't somebody tell me another game they've played? What did you guys actually play apart from the Midhalla? What else did you guys play at Tabletop Scotland?
Loads. We played
Doom. So I took Sid through Doom. Now I've finished painting all the miniatures, and they do look bloody good. I'm not going to lie.
They are quite cool.
We played Planetarium. We played, the one we got out of the library was actually Explorers of the North Sea. So obviously this is Garpill's sort of first series. So you've got Shipwrights, Explorers, and Raiders. So we played Shipwright. We played Explorers. And we rather enjoyed it. It's quite simple. It's a kind of pick up and deliver thing. So you put down a hex to do an explore. Then you get 4 actions. So you can either move your ship or your men. You can jump into ship or jump out of ship. You can move sheep and pigs and things around, put them on your ship and take them back home as gifts for your chief. Or you can sort of take control of an island and build a sort of house on it just to make sure that you get points at the end of the game, essentially. So you can get points for controlling islands, points for collections of animals, and points for conquering villages. So villages around the map have a sort of a random number of points associated to them, between 2 and 5, I think it is. So you can pile in a bunch of your Vikings, beat the crap out of the village, and you get a bunch of points for them. So you've got a combination of these 3 things. And of course, other people are trying to do the same thing. So you've got to try and make sure you don't get in each other's way too much, or be antagonistic and just get in everyone's way, which is also kind of fun. But for a really simple and straightforward game, we really, really enjoyed it.
It was really good. And it was a surprise, because I think, and fair dues, I think I was unknown to it, so I didn't really kind of know how to feel about it. But I think Andy was a bit resistant initially, but we persevered through with Laura's kind of encouragement.
I got to admit, I've heard like the general feeling is that from because the Garphill Games have done these like 3x3 series, so north, south, east, west. The general consensus appears to be that Raiders of the North Sea is good and Explorers and Shipwrights are kind of okay.
Yeah, I think that was one of the reasons I was probably slightly hesitant, or at least skeptical to start with. But I genuinely think, I think the fact that all 3 of us, because Laura played with us as well, so there's the 3 of us playing it, and all 3 of us really enjoyed it. So I think it might have had a bit of a bad rap, or maybe it's because we've played all of the other Garphill games apart from Shipwrights. And it is very consistent in terms of its tone, its theme, its artwork, its iconography. We kind of, just get it, as it were. But I think it worked. It was a really straightforward game. It was fun. It was fun.
It was really good fun. To the point where I think we were all almost chasing a copy.
Yeah. Very much so. Yeah. We're kind of keeping our eye out for a copy of it, because we've already got Raiders, which Laura really enjoys, and Steve and I have problems with, but we'll gloss over that. But I'd be quite happy to own Explorers, and obviously, if you're going to have 2 out of the 3, you might as well get the 3rd. So if we can get those 3, then I think we will probably happily do that. So yeah, I think Explorers certainly is definitely worth a punt. And it's not long. It's quite straightforward. It's probably slightly lighter than Architects in terms of weight. A very, very different design and different sort of mechanics of the game. But in terms of heft, it's really on the sort of the lighter side. I'd say sort of 2, maybe 2.5 out of 5 at the most. It's pretty straightforward stuff. But yeah, worth playing. Definitely worth playing. What else did we play? We played. We've had a good couple of games to play. Society.
Snowdonia.
Played Snowdonia. Yeah. Laura managed to rope in a couple of sort of random ladies who proceeded to absolutely thrash us at Snowdonia. I
feel like we got hustled.
We did get hustled there. No, we've never played this before. Yeah, whatever goes. But that was really enjoyable. It's a very different game with 5 people as Snowdonia, because Laura and I play it with just the 2 of us, but there's a lot more interaction with the 5-player game. It's really good, but a lot more competitive. A lot more swearing too when the first 3 players rob all of the resources, and you're the mug left, right at the end, and you've got nothing to choose from. So we also played Dune Imperium. Again, we really like that. I think, is that the first time you've played that?
That was my first playthrough, and it is bloody good. I do, however, agree with the collective opinion that I believe was offered on this podcast a few months ago, that the theme is thin.
Yes, it is. It could be about anything, but it works.
But that aside, it's a really fun game.
It is a really fun game.
Really good game.
Really clever game. So I'm definitely glad I've got that. I am trying to get hold of the expansion, but that is like rocking or shit to get hold of at the moment. So I'm going to have to wait for a reprint, I think, or for the second expansion, which I know is coming out at some point, I think this year. So they might do, hopefully a reprint of that. Yeah, that's what I'm hoping. And then we also played, I think the first thing we played actually was Tekkenu. So Big Davy T's
we did.
Egypt game with the rotating obelisk.
Ooh.
And Sid did rather well at that.
Yes.
And I got absolutely battered. But I always do, so never mind. So yeah, I think that was what we played. I can't remember.
That sounds about right. I think Planetarium for me was a nice surprise. Really enjoyed Planetarium.
It's a really good game.
What a beautiful game as well. I mean,
it's a Planetarium. I can think of. I can't actually picture this game.
I think you will really enjoy Planetarium, Rory. It'll be right up your street. It's a kind of sub-hour game, but it's very. It's chunky. You can get your teeth into it, but it goes quick. So the idea is that you are collectively as players. It's a competitive game, but you are collectively building a solar system essentially. So a star has formed, and there's a bunch of crap orbiting this star clockwise, including 4 planets. And you have some cards in your hand, and the idea is that you collect the resources, these sort of lumps of crap floating around the star, and they're sort of orbiting. There's basically a bunch of orbital rings, and each of the lumps of minerals, so you got water, gas, rocks, and metal, I think it is, in various quantities, and you can collide a planet with a rock, with one of these lumps, or a lump with one of the planets, and then you can put that lump onto the planet A, B, C, or D, in which forms a collision, and eventually you can play a card that has a bunch of resource requirements on it onto that planet. And the idea is that towards the end of and you'll score points for doing that. And towards the end of the game, there are kind of final scoring conditions that will allow you to score points depending on the position of the planet, as in sort of distance from the sun. There's basically a bunch of belts that it can sit in. The type of planet it is, so rocky or gaseous, and whether it's hospitable to life or not. And of course, everyone else is trying to do this as well. So there's a real good fight for moving the planets around to get them into the right sort of maybe the Goldilocks zone. And also everyone's sort of fighting for resources, but they're also trying to make them habitable or not. So it just works so well. And every time you play a card, you put the resources on this tracker, and basically so everyone can see how quickly the game is ticking down. And then you suddenly get sort of 2/3 of the way through the game, and everyone goes, "Oh shit!" Because it's like 2 turns later, bosh, the game is over, and that's it. It's incredibly clever for what it is. It is literally on your turn. You will move one of these tokens into a planet, and then maybe play a card if you can. Next player. It's that simple. It's just wonderful.
How many players is that?
Up to 4.
Okay.
You need at least 2. There's no solo rules, I think. But I wouldn't see the benefit of playing it on your own, because it wouldn't make sense.
Games on our own.
It is a competitive game.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But it's not a horrible competitive game. There's no take that or anything like that. It's just you can steal someone else's resource, but you wouldn't know it was there. So it's not as if I can say, "Oh, I know Steve's going for that," because obviously I don't know what cards he's got. I can't just rob a piece of resource from him. So it's quite good like that. So if somebody does something to you, you've got to kind of think around it and maybe change tack a bit. But it's really easy to do that. So, but the resources get hoovered up quickly, and as I say, the game ticks down quite quickly as well. But you get to this interesting bit towards the end. So there's like a big circle at the end of this track. Basically, as soon as a resource goes into that triggers the end of the game. So you can get to the point where you're like 3 or 4 resource lumps off this end lump, and everyone's kind of hovering around because they're trying to move the planets around and not play any cards because they don't want to trigger the end of the game until they've got everything sort of set up right. It's really good. And then some mad bastard just goes, "I'm playing it," and off you go. And then a lot of swearing induces because you've ended the game 2 turns too soon.
I was, do you know what? I remember you sat down, we started playing it, and you said, "Right, it's going to go really slowly, and then it's going to speed up." And I was like, "Yeah, he always says shit like this." And he's right. It just like, honestly, it was like this. There's this like tutorial phase at the start of it, which is kind of everything's kind of nice. There's loads of resources on the board, so you can basically get what you want initially, and then obviously as you start taking resource off the board, it starts to get more and more difficult to necessarily move the things you want to move where. And then that's the point when everything's sped up. So it's like, oh man, I just loved it. I loved that little speed up that happened. And it was just this last flurry at the end to play your end condition cards before somebody screwed it up for you.
It's actually slightly reminiscent in a way of Nancy-Narking, in terms of it's got a slow start, but then it builds up.
It escalates quickly, okay.
And then you've everyone's kind of on edge because everyone's thinking of the end of the game's coming soon, but you're not quite sure who's going to do it and who's going to win. It's kind of got that feel about it, and it's also a similar sort of weight and a similar sort of style and a similar sort of length. So it's that kind of game.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely sounding like my type of game.
I think
I just looked it up.
it.
It's a Game Salute game as well.
It is. It was one of my earliest Kickstarters, actually. So this was back in the day when Game Salute were allegedly supporting their next game with their current game.
Yeah.
The current game with their next... You know which way around it is. But obviously things have moved on since then. The really annoying thing about Planetarium, though, is that it has an expansion. Which I haven't actually played with yet. But I think it was a different company that made it because the expansion doesn't quite look right and the tokens are a slightly different size and it's really bloody annoying.
That is very annoying.
But it does add various other elements to it, like comets and gas clouds and things like that. So different mechanics that can affect the evolution of planets. So yeah, but it's a really cool idea. So I mean, if somebody says to you, how do you got a board game about basically creating a solar system, how on earth does that work? It turns out really bloody well is how it works.
Cool. It's good to know. Good to know.
But it's about, I mean, it cost me, I think it was $44, I think, when I backed it, and I think these days it's about £40 to buy.
Okay.
It's worth that.
Yeah.
It's worth that. I mean, you look at it and you go, but it's all really well made. You know, all the cards were nice and they were really nice graphics.
And there's a bit of science on each card as well to tell you exactly what's going on.
A little bit of science. All right, okay. Win-win.
So yeah, I think that was pretty much everything we played at TTS.
I think it was.
Sounds like you had a productive weekend.
We did. We went to a gaming convention and we played games.
I mean, we should also say we did have a good, you know, it's good to meet some of the vendors up there as well and some of the stall owners because there was a good amount of people. Really nice. As Andy said, a good number. Not too many, but enough to give you something to do. You know, when you go for a wee walk, it's nice just to wander around and chat to a few folk. And folk were really generous for the time as well. You know, folk wanted to talk about their passions and their loves. So it was a nice place to be.
Yes, very much so. Speaking of which, we did have a chat with the guys who make the Terminator RPG.
We did, Nightfall Games.
Nightfall, yes. So we talked to them about the Terminator game. I sort of flicked through it, and that looked pretty good, actually. So yeah, I think at some point we'll probably try and get a game of that in our, short list of RPGs ever growing. And we also had a talk about, what was their other game? I can't remember the name of it now.
Slay,
that's it. SLA it's called, which has been around for a little bit while now. I think they're on to their second edition.
I think it's a I don't want to call it reboot, remake, remastering. It's overhauled. It's overhauled from the original edition.
Yeah. So they took us through that as well, which sounds like, basically we think free league games are brutal, and you're given the advice, don't get too attached to your character. That is even more true of Slay. You've got character, they're going to die. There's no, I might survive till the end. No, you're going to die. Just get used to it. Roll up 3 characters and just go from there. Mr. Summers.
Do you want to tell you about Rise and Fall?
Yes.
Rise and Fall from Ludicali Games. I've been playing this a little bit over the last few weeks in the run-up to the Kickstarter, and I really enjoy this game. It's one of those games that the rules are really simple, but it is an incredibly intricate game, so actually playing it is the only way to really learn how to play it. So it's an area control game. The object of the game is you build this random map. So between us on the table, we'd create the world, starting with the sea, then the fields and the jungles and the mountains and the ice peaks. So the map is going to be completely different every time we play it, which is really good fun, and it's built up in literally 3 dimensions. And then after that, it is about you're trying to control as much of those areas as possible. So it's having as many of your units, or more, the majority of your units in any given particular field. Now, so that's ships in the sea, that's units on the field, or units in the forest and the mountains, and they're all worth varying degrees of points. So I think the mountains and the forests are worth the most, and then the fields are worth the least. But the fields are usually much bigger open spaces, as well, at least in the maps I've played so far. And you've got 6 unit types. You've got a villager or a nomad, you've got a ship, a city, a temple, a merchant, and then like this snow leopard rider. You've got these 6 units, yeah, and each unit has a card. And you start the game with 3 of these, a city, a villager, and a ship. Each one has got a card, and in your turn, you're going to pick a card to play, you're going to put it down in front of you, and then all units of that card type activate, and you pick one of the actions on the card. So, and depending on which unit you're doing, they're about 4 actions each. And they go off and do that. And then that card stays down on the table. So your next turn, you've got 2 choices. You make your choice, you activate all of those units. And then your third turn, finally, you're going to activate your final card. You pick all your cards up, and you keep going round and round like that. And all this happens more or less simultaneously. You play your card down simultaneously, then in turn order, you activate them. And that's the rules. That's the rules of the game. It's that, it really is that simple. But the complexity in this game comes from almost like there's like upgrades. So your villager is like a really key component, but you need your villager to collect your resources, but you need your villager to also move towards the sea so that your villager can, with some wood that you've harvested previously, become a ship. And then when they're in the sea, they can do the things that ships can do. Or when they're stood next to a city, the city can use its action to train that villager into becoming a merchant. And merchants can go off and get you loads of money. And they're the only piece that can occupy the same hex as an opponent. Or you want to transform them into a snowcat, and snowcats are the ones that can travel really fast and aren't affected by changes in terrain height. But there's all of these things with this game. It's all about optimizing your cards, making sure I'm playing the right card at the right time as part of this right sequence, so that I can maximize the efficiency of that card and those unit types to benefit me for the next turn, that benefits me for the next one, so that I've got this card, I've got access to this thing. And all at the same time, everyone's trying to do this. And it's got a really interesting aspect that there's no combat in this game at all. So the way you're trying to occupy areas on the map and having the majority of your pieces, but you can't take off your opponent's pieces. So it's just about flooding them on there, but you can only move in only certain units can move in certain patterns. So you get these really brilliant moments in a game where people just create these massive blockades or make these really dangerous pinch points, which makes it very expensive for you to move through. So it really is. It's all about manipulating the map as much as you can with your forces to kind of section it off to your benefit. It's really thinky. I'm going to explain this. You've got pick a card, pick one of 3 cards, and that's what you're going to do. You're going to activate all of those units. And at the beginning of the game, it's really simple. But towards the end of the game, it's which one do I do in which order? Because I need to do this, to do that, to do this other thing, then do that. But then I need to pick up this card again. Am I going to... I really like it. But it
sounds like it.
I really like it, but it is really tricky. And I teach it to people, and some people have bounced off it really hard. Some people have gone, I enjoyed this, but my brain is a little bit up now, and I need to... And then there's other people that have gone, I found it really interesting. I feel like I need to play it again, but I need a bit of a palate cleanser before I go. And it's like, I think playing it a second or third time, you're taking in so much extra knowledge, so much extra information. And I could sit here now and tell you what each of all the different actions of all the different types of units. And you would get it, you would hear it, you'd understand it, but you wouldn't understand the relevance and the importance of that until you've done it. And that's why it's a really tricky game to teach, because I need to impart how to play but the intricacies of how to play. It's a really intricate game, and that's what makes it fascinating. That's what makes it really interesting for me. But now I'm at that point where people kind of don't really want to play with me anymore.
It sounds. I mean, I saw you playing a demo of it at Expo, so I can kind of understand what it looks like, and see, I know roughly what you're talking about. To me, it sounds reminiscent of, but very different to, Cooper Island.
Okay,
if you played that, because you're building up terrain.
Oh,
Yeah.
Now it's a very different mechanic, and obviously in Cooper Island, you're building monuments and buildings and things from using the resources that land. So when you build up land, the higher the terrain, the more resources it's worth, basically. And then when you build something, you consume those resources in like one big lump. But it's a very unforgiving game in the sense that if you screw up near the start of the game, you're humped. Because
Rise and Fall is a lot like that as well. If you make a mistake, it's happened over the last few times I've played it, where you've put a city somewhere and it's just a really stupid place to put a city. And I've done it where I've run this unit off, my snowcat or a person off over here to claim that objective, to occupy this so I get these points. And then I try and do something clever and realise, actually, no, that was a terrible, terrible thing to do. And there's no backseas in this game, and that's hard.
Yeah, it's the same in Cooper Island is the same. There's no, once you've done something, there's no way to sort of recover from a screw up.
That's it. Once I've turned something into a city, it's a city. Yeah. And if it might be that, I mean, because like with a city, to go into a bit more detail here, cities create villages for you. And and you need villagers, and villagers essentially then can transform into everything else. So you need villagers. They collect all your resources, but they can only produce a village. They can't. If you put a city on a mountain, they can't produce a villager 2 levels below them, which is what I did as a prize idiot. I put a city on a coast. I was like, and the plan was, I'm going to put a city there, then I'm going to produce a villager, and then that villager is going to go into the water and have a ship, and then I'm going to be able to do this and this and this and this. And then I did it, and I was like, actually, I can't do any of those things. That whole plan has just gone completely out the window because of this simple... And I've made that mistake several times each game, and every player has as well. It's got a really steep learning curve. But it's very rewarding when you do pull it off.
Yeah, okay. I have to admit, I am a little not hesitant, because I played Cooper Island a few times. I can kind of see what it's doing, but I think there's games like that I find just a little bit too restrictive for me, mostly because I'm shit. So I make lots of mistakes. So I want something slightly more forgiving, because, if you've got 5 rounds or whatever it is, or 6 rounds or whatever, like Tekkenu's similar, actually. In that sense, it's a limited number of goes in your game, so you've got to be as efficient as possible. And if you screw up right from the start, then you've just got to hope that everybody else screws up too. And if somebody doesn't, then they're obviously going to win. So I don't know if I'm still on the fence about whether I like that kind of game or not.
It's very freeform. It's got a real sandbox feeling to it. This game, just like the way you create the map, then you can literally go anywhere and do anything within reason. And with the end of the game, you've just got to occupy more. You've got to occupy spaces, and that's it. And it's good for that, but because of that freedom, it's quite hard for new players, I think, to have a direction of where do I go, how do I secure points, how do I go over to this mountain range and make sure that I can occupy it, get all these points at the end of the game, and keep it safe from everybody else. And that is really hard to do.
Okay. But still, it does sound interesting. And it certainly looked good on the table when you were playing.
It looks fantastic. It looks lovely, because the copy I've got has got if you go on the Kickstarter, it's on Kickstarter right now, and there's like 3 tiers. You've just got like standard meeples, and you've got the fancy shaped meeples, and then you've got the UV screen printed meeples, which is what I've got which is what they had as the demo copy as well.
Okay. So is it still going to be on Kickstarter when this podcast gets?
It will. It's on for at least another 20.
It's on Kickstarter now.
Oh, that's good.
I think
that's all right.
2-3 weeks. So
excellent. Good,
as of the time of recording. Yeah.
Superb.
I think it's got a. If you went for the base game, I think it's got a fair price point to it. I think this game, it expands quite nicely. It's got a solo mode. it scales down to 2 players. It goes up to 8 players. There's also there's a co-op mode as well, and there's a level of asymmetry, or essentially special powers. So it's not dedicated to the red player always has this. There's a little deck of cards. I flick a card out to each of you, and you've now got a special ability.
Okay, that's good.
That card.
It sounds like there's a lot of game for your money then.
I think there's an awful lot of game for you. If you like this game, if your gaming group likes this game, there's a lot to keep coming back for.
Excellent. Okay.
And that's Rise and Fall by Ludicali.
We have had quite a few questions and a little bit of feedback.
Oh.
So I'm going to start with feedback. So I can't pronounce this username. Mohitek says they were 40 minutes into our last episode of the podcast and enjoyed it as always. But, Scout, I think you missed its sweet spot.
We didn't.
I was at a games weekend, and after 4 to 5 heavier games, this came to the table and really went down well. I would like it when you're enjoying a rich, fine meal, and at that point you have a palate cleanser slice of melon. I do agree that it's probably not your normal game fare, but there is a time for it that works.
No, there's not.
No.
Carry on.
We don't like being told we're wrong. Go away. No.
Oh, I don't mind being told I'm wrong, but in this case, I don't think we were wrong.
No, because we played about 2 or 3 games of it. It's not as if we just sort of played it once and then went, no, it's not for us. But we did try to play it 2 or 3 times, and it.
I think I've played 3 games of it.
Yeah,
in the
you
end.
did. Yeah, and it just.
It just
It's
wasn't,
not
it
for
wasn't
us.
for us.
No.
It's not the game for us.
I'm also not a massive fan of melons.
I'm also, I was going to ask for that. So, melon at the start with a bit of ham.
Oh, Parma ham and melon. I'm hungry now. You
Melon
bastard.
after your rich meal. What?
No, after a rich
Should
meal,
be a lemon,
you
more
have
like a sorbet
port,
or
whiskey,
something.
and cigars. That's what you have after a rich meal.
Exactly that. It's it. I think we just walk in different circles.
I think we do. I think we must. Yes. Right. Next question.
So, next question.
Thank you for the feedback. No, seriously though, thank you for the feedback.
It just goes to show that
I just don't think it's for us.
No.
It's just not a game for us.
Lorraine Compton asks, "What is the longest board game you've ever played?" Talisman with John. I mean, no.
Well,
Talisman with John.
Probably
Genuinely. Actually, to be fair to John, it isn't the longest game I've played because I have played Twilight Imperium, and that was a good 8 hours.
See, I vaguely remember, this is donkeys years ago now, playing Monopoly at my friend's house when I was in school, and I stayed the night at his house. And I remember we started playing it in the evening, so let's say it was 8 o'clock. And I remember we suddenly died for bed when we heard his dad come back from his night shift. So I have no idea what time in the morning it was, but that was like old games of Monopoly where no one actually knew the proper rules. It just kept going on and on and on.
On a similar note, and I'm going to say this, and I don't want any comments or questions after I say it, but at the weekend...
You're going to get some.
You're going to get some. Now you've prepped us. Now you've primed us up.
No, I'm not. But at the weekend just gone, I did spend a long time playing Monopoly Stranger Things. And it went on for a long time. And I don't...
Did you play it properly?
Yeah, of course I played it properly, Steve.
Well, I thought you would. It's
I
just
did
that
do the
last
house
time
rule that when you pay a fine, it goes into the middle of the board, and then free parking picks it up. I do that. I like that.
No,
but other than that, it's proper.
No. That makes the game longer though.
Do you know what?
I
I managed to collect that money every single time though. No one else got it. Right, so it worked for me. But I got very upset playing that game, and I don't want to talk about it.
Not surprised.
So, yeah, it's a Monopoly, but failing Monopoly, who goes there? I always find that to be quite a long game.
Yeah,
that did take a long time.
That's a 3.5 hour, 4 hour game. That is every time I play it.
Great Western Trail with Andy. That's only a half-hour game.
You make
listen to him.
I said about an hour and a half. I underestimated how long that would actually take.
How long did it take?
It was about 3 hours, 3.5 hours, I think, which was longer than I expected. To be fair, because it's not.
It was longer than everyone expected.
It was, yes. But actually, you've just reminded me. Speaking of who goes there, I actually played a game of The Great Wall by Awakened Realms. last year, when a few of us went to sort of country house and played a few games for a weekend, and that lasted about 6.5 hours.
Oh.
Yeah, that was. I mean, a couple of us were hanging out of our arse, so that probably didn't help. But that was a long game. That was a really long game.
I'm pretty sure the longest game I've ever played is like Arkham Horror. I think that's it. The games I can think of, which are like recent games, which have ended up being long ones, are Arkham, that kind of FFG sprawling games. So things like Star Wars Rebellion, Horus Heresy, Arkham Horror, that kind of thing. Especially there's a point in Arkham Horror when you can get stuck in a little bit of a loop where you're not progressing at all, but neither's the Doom track. It's one of the things I think Eldritch Horror actually fixes.
Hang on, haven't you guys got a copy of Pandemic Legacy still on the go? So is that not the longest ever played game? Because it's not actually finished.
Game, yeah, that's probably true. The longest.
But then if you're gonna count
game,
that, do you not count like some of the RPGs? I mean, we played Dungeons and Dragons for 2.5 years.
It does say, to be fair, Lorraine has said board game.
Board game, okay.
Yeah, you can't count that.
Okay.
They've been clever there.
Clever.
Caught us out. Don't want to hear about RPGs, do they? That's what it is.
Torrin Spence asks, do any of you play solo games? And if so, what are your favourite games to play solo at the moment?
I think it's probably fair to say that none of us play solo games as a matter of course. None of us sort of seek to play solo games, really. No. But I have played a few over the last year or two. So I've played Tainted Grail, which is fucking amazing. And I have also played Imperial Assault with the app on my own. That works really well, actually. Doing quite well. I thought I was doing quite well until Darth Vader turned up, and it says Darth Vader cannot be defeated. And I thought, well, there's only one way this scenario is going to go in it. And it went that way. And I have recently, as in within the last week of this recording, acquired Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth, which is essentially Mansions of Hobbitness.
Mansions
of Middle-earth. Yeah, it really is. It runs on the app. It's a very similar sort of style of game. But I've gone through that, or I am going through that on my own as well, and that works quite well as well. So I'm really enjoying that.
Are you playing it totally solo, or are you two-handing
Two-handing it, because it does recommend you play it as sort of two people when you solo it. So yeah, it's a solo playthrough on my own, but it's with two characters. So
I think the only solo game I've got and have ever played is Super Hot.
Oh, yes.
Which
is
is
awesome in VR. Jesus, that's brilliant in VR.
It is actually a good little solo game, but I think I've played that enough now to go, I'm done with it. But that's the only solo game I've ever played.
It's an interesting subject, though, this, isn't it? Solo gaming.
Yes. It seems to be hot shit at the moment.
It seems to be very hot shit, and we all seem quite divided in our opinions of it.
Yeah, well, I think it's as I alluded to before, because none of us really seek to play solo board games. It's because I think inherently, I would imagine. Please correct if I'm speaking out of turn, but I think we're probably all of the opinion that board games are a social thing. I
like this. Yeah, I do like the social. I mean, there are a couple. I have quite liked the look of. Is it Hostage Negotiator, which is a solo game?
Okay,
I've heard some really good things about that, and I like the look of it, and the theme I find very interesting. And it's got hundreds of expansions. I think if you want to buy it and all of the expansions, you're looking at about 200 rips.
See, I know we've said that. I've definitely said this before. For me, if I've got time to play a solo game, I'm probably actually going to play on PlayStation.
Yeah,
and that's my hobby. My hobby time is split that way. It's like board games are a social thing, so I play them with other people, and then when I'm solo gaming, I'm video gaming.
I was going to say the same thing, because I mean, you and I have we tried to play This War of Mine, which is kind of inherently a solo board game, but you can play it with others. But we both came to the same conclusion: if you're going to play it, and if you're going to play it on your own, you might as well play the video game, because it's a shitload less faff. Because you don't have to do all the admin or anything like that. And I think that's probably true of most games, to be honest.
But then there's a flip side of that is Greg, who's relatively new to the board gaming scene, is really getting on with solo gaming.
Okay.
He's doing quite a lot of it. He's playing through Descent on his own and a few other things. And he's just, because he says it fits with his timeline, with his availability of people. And
Descent's like Mansions, though. It has an app, so you can go through it on your own. And that's kind of what it's designed. It works really well, to be fair. It's a really good kind of game for that.
Yeah, we won't go anywhere near solo RPGs because that'll just turn into a whole emotional hot potato. So just move on.
Writing a novel, that's what that is, isn't it?
No, Andy, stop.
Oh, I've gone too far now.
We're not opening this can of worms.
Nope. Move swiftly on.
Tom Ibbison asks, which 3 board games are must-have for a collection?
That is a difficult question.
It's a really difficult question. I've been thinking about this since he asked me this on Friday, and I still haven't got an answer.
See, to me, my brain says the classics. So my brain says Ticket to Ride, Carcassonne. I can't think of third.
I agree that I think you need...
Pandemic. Yeah,
I do think you need a classic in there, but I went with Splendor. I mean, I can't stand Carcassonne or Ticket to Ride, and I also went with Root. But the thing is, Root is, I think, it's because
it's a good game.
Root, you can have Root, the standard Root, and you get a lot of game in that box. If it's just you and your other half, there's a lot of game in that one box.
It's very true.
Splendor if you want something a bit light, 10-minute game. Root if you want something a bit more crunchy. But then I really struggled with a third one.
I would suggest I would say something like Istanbul, because that kind of fills the Splendor Ticket to Ride kind of weight. It's easy to teach, it's good fun, it's easy to play, and I really, really like Istanbul, and it's a very, very clever game. I think I would say something like Mansions of Madness for that kind of exploratory nutcase. You're probably going to die, but you're going to have fun doing it kind of fun kind of game. Or Arkham Horror, something along those lines. It's kind of a classic, but kind of not. And then I think for a third one, I think you need something with a bit of chunk to it. But again, I'm not quite sure. Maybe Lords of Waterdeep.
Oh, that's a great shout, actually.
Mm.
That's a really good shout. That's a top quality worker placement game, that is.
It really is. It is a Fisher Price worker placement, baby's first worker placement, but it is really bloody good.
I see, now I'm thinking maybe Agricola.
Ooh. That's not a bad shout.
Misery Farm.
Misery Farm.
I do have to give dibs to Secret Cabal for that joke.
Misery Farm. Do you know what? I've never played Agricola. I've got Caverna and played it a few times. I've never played Agricola.
I've only ever played it on my iPad. The iPad version's actually really good. Looks really pretty as well. So rather than worker placement spots like a board, it's got a little village with all the spots as little houses in the village. But yeah, it's depressing when you've got to keep feeding your family, and then when you have to reduce the number of people in your family because you haven't got enough food.
Actually, to be fair, Caverna does that as well. So you've got some misery caves. At least in Caverna, you do get the option of slaughtering pigs to feed your family. So that's not too bad.
You can do that in Agricola as well.
Oh, can you?
Yeah.
I don't know. No.
Yeah, that's the whole point. Yeah, Agricola is just you are farming.
Yeah,
you're making your little farm, but your little
you're farmers instead of cavemen.
So Caverna, you're farming as well, but you can also go mining. Okay, so he's tacked that onto the edge, right? Yeah. Okay, I understand.
Yeah.
We touched on this question earlier of what's your biggest regret purchase? Maybe a game you're so excited to get, had to maybe hunt it down as it was out of print or was expensive and it didn't hit the mark or was downright shite. From Fran Wade.
Well, do you want to lead this charge, Rory?
Oh, well, I love Brandon Sanderson. I really like his books and have done for a very long time. So when I was on Kickstarter, when I first found out, really kind of discovered Kickstarter and saw Mistborn House War, and I love the Mistborn series. It's easily my favourite series of books by the man. I was like, I've got to buy this. And I bought it, and it wasn't a cheap game. And then there was an expansion, and I backed the expansion as well. Then there was some penny gem, like pimpage for the game, and I got those. And then there were bespoke card sleeves, and I got those. And then there were some minis to add on to it, so I got those. And I think overall, and this was my early days of Kickstarter, but I think The game, including shipping, came into about 260 odd quid, which isn't it's not as big as they are now these days with some like Ank, but it was a big number at the time. And it turned up, and I was very excited, and I got all my penny gems out and started sticking them down on all these lovely like magnetic tokens, and it looked lovely, and sleeved all my cards and got my minis out and put the game out and started to learn how to play. Really excited to get to the table in front of some people. I think I did it that night, and it was just rubbish. But I was convinced. I was convinced there had to be a good game in here somewhere because I'd spent so much money on it. So then I played it again the week after, and it was still rubbish. And then I took it to Steve's house, and we played it 5-player, and it was just it was so soul destroying. I put a lot of effort into making that game good. And trying to be enthusiastic about it, and trying not to pollute other people's opinions about it before the game. You know, trying to make myself excited to play it so that they would be excited to play it. And we played it, and it was just rubbish. And yeah, that's it. That's my biggest regret.
Mistborn, okay. I think I'm torn between either Grim Forest.
Ooh,
Yeah, because that was just turd. But it wasn't, I say only, it was 60 quid. And the thing is, it was 40 quid too much. And also, thankfully, Alora bought this, but also Tapestry. Because I really wanted to like Tapestry, and it's just not very good.
My biggest regret is probably Dark Souls, which I still own.
Despite lack of trying.
You can't shift it.
Well, no. The irony is I haven't tried to shift it. I've never got around to do it because I keep saying that I do. See, I like the boss fights.
Yes.
I think the boss fights are really good. It's just everything getting up to that point. It just seems to be badly designed. Now, there is a ray of hope here in that Steamforged Games are re-releasing this at the moment. They're doing like 2 standalone box sets for it, which apparently have new, completely redesigned, backwards compatible rules. So apparently they've taken on a hell of a lot of community feedback and have completely updated
90%
the rules,
bile.
Well, yeah. So I'm intrigued by that, and apparently the new rules are going to be available for free.
Oh, that's good.
They are completely backwards compatible. So since I haven't already got rid of it, I do feel like I need to give it a second chance with the new rules. But it may well be that after that it goes on eBay. Because I spent quite a lot of money on it. I didn't go completely in on the expansions, but I got the base big. There was like a base big pledge, if that made sense. And then some extras you get. And I bought the extras for the bits of the game I really loved. So I got the Gaping Dragon boss, and I made sure I got the Sith, which is the wolf with the massive sword in his mouth. And yeah, I've never played. I made a point of getting these things and never actually got around to playing them because I played the base game a couple of times and went. I have other regrets. I have some regrets the other way around as well, which are games that I wish I'd backed on Kickstarter.
There is a follow-on question from a chap called Andy, not me. Is there a board game, not an RPG, that you are aware of but have never played but love to?
See, now I saw that question. I'm thinking something different here. I've got Blood Rage, and I bought Blood Rage at retail. And I regret not backing the Kickstarter for that because I love Blood Rage, and I now wish I'd got all the ridiculous piles of Simon expansions for it.
Yeah. I mean, I have basically my shelf of shame. I'm aware of all of them, but I've never played them. But genuinely, I mean, I actually have Dead of Winter Warring Factions, which I've had for years and years and years, and I have never played it, but it's for like 10 players, so the chances are I'm never going to. But God damn it, I want to play it because I want to see what it's like.
I've actually got a keep note with a list of all the games that I want to play and games that I just flat out just want to buy.
Oh, okay.
And I think we've talked about on before, but a game that I really, really want to just buy because I've heard that you guys talk about it so much is Donning the Purple.
It's bloody brilliant.
I missed the Kickstarter. Everyone I've listened to or have heard has talked nothing but good things about Donning the Purple, and and I think it's one of those. I'm just going to buy it as soon as I can find it for a reasonable price.
It's so good, but it needs 3 players.
Yeah.
It's designed for 3. You can play it with 2, but you really need the full 3. You can get the expansion; will give you 4. I haven't played the expansion for it yet. I think that's the general. But yeah, it's outstanding when Steve and I played it. It was just so good. It's such a clever game. And it's got that deliberate imbalance to it. Because when you're you need to be the emperor to win. But as soon as you are the emperor, you've got a bloody great bullseye on your forehead.
So I've actually got an RPG on my list of games to buy as well. I really want to buy, specifically, I want to buy it for Halloween, is 10 Candles. Because I think that's going to be a really nice game to play at Halloween.
Talk it up, Rory. Come on, speak to me.
All I know about this game is that it's there's no GM. You're all players in this game. I don't even know what system it uses, but you need to get.
It's its own system.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it's its own thing because the candles are the system.
That's it, because you've got to go and buy yourself like a 30-minute tea light candle. It's got to be one that lasts for 30 minutes, and then every player sits around a table in a dark room with these candles in front of you, and that candle is your life force. And if you accidentally blow it out, you're out the game. And
I have heard of this, yes.
Yeah, and you have to do the game and stuff, and then you might have to blow the candle out because your character has died somehow. Or you've got to finish the story before everyone goes out. So ideally, you play this in a group of people around a table, and slowly, one by one, the candles go out, and the room gets darker and darker and darker as you get drawn into this horror death story.
That shit. I'm shitting bricks out here. I'm tingling, man. I'm not playing that.
That sounds
I'll have to hold
amazing.
somebody's hand.
You couldn't do that with beer though, because you just get more rambly, so you'd get less gameplay.
Well, no. What would happen is somebody would get up and go for a piss. They'd flick the door open,
and let the lights.
The candles would go out. Yeah.
There'd be like a massacre or something of everyone dying instantly.
Going for a new beer would be a TPK. Well, that's amazing. Oh, well, there you go.
So, on a similar note, from an RPG point of view, I've always wanted to try Dread.
Yeah.
As in Judge Dredd.
So, Dread is... No. Dread is a game where the system is a Jenga block.
So I literally, they had the Jenga block towers on sale in Aldi the other week, so I went and bought one just so I can go and buy Dread. Because they also have... Dread. What's the other game they do?
Starcrossed. So basically, the system is it's a horror game again. When something nasty happens to you, you can either accept the consequences or do a brick from the Jenga tower. So basically, it's called Dread because the sense of dread is increasing as the Jenga tower is getting more and more unstable as time goes on.
Good.
Yeah, I think it's like the 10 candles thing. I think it's going to be like you play it once or twice. And
you can also
I can't see
the Jenga block tower is also used for a game called Starcrossed, which won, I think, the Diana Jones Award a few years back. It's when I first heard about the Diana Jones, and it's a 2-player RPG about players who are star-crossed lovers, but are not meant to be together. And you have to take the Jenga blocks out to build it up every time you come into this point of will they, won't they. But the idea of the game is it's not necessarily like, like say Superman and Lois Lane, like or Romeo and Juliet. It's more like, well, I'm a human and you're a parasite, and you love me and I kind of love what you do to me, and it's like this weird thing. I quite like the sound of that. And once you bought the Jenga tower, you've got all you need to play both games, Dread and Starcrossed.
And Jenga.
So it's three. Three games
in one.
2 RPGs and this silly little kids game. It's great.
So, talk about board games. I still would really like to play Twilight Imperium, and I do own it, but I've never played my copy. So it's Shelf of Shame thing again, but I would still really love to play that. And this is a really weird one. I've always wanted to play this game, but now I think it's too old, and I think I'll play it as creaky and crap. I've always wanted to play Mighty Empires.
Yes, I have.
The old Warhammer game. And not play it as a Warhammer campaign, just play it as a normal game. Because it just sounded so amazing to me. Here you basically play out an entire thing of Warhammer, universe. You had the whole world, and you had little mines you built, and armies that moved around, and castles and fortifications you built on all this terrain. I have a funny feeling that game's now 30 years old.
Today.
So I think that you'll probably play it now and go, oh my God, I'm looking up 20 tables. Oh my God, we're now 8 hours in and we're still only a third of the way through the game. Yeah, actually, listener suggestion, if someone knows of a game which is a modern board game that has the same feel as Mighty Empires, I would really like to know, because my brain still wants to play that game, even though I've never played it and know if it's any good. But at the same time, the game's long out of print, and I said it's probably well out of date.
I enjoyed it at the time, but that was 25, 30 years ago. So, yeah, times have changed. Cuthbert Bellows, biggest oh no, what have I done during an RPG game?
Right, I've got a good board game one. So I played War of the Ring with Adam. Now, if you know War of the Ring is basically in the same way that Star Wars Rebellion is the Star Wars trilogy in one board game. War of the Ring is the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy in one board game. So you've got basically an asymmetric kind of game where one side is the Alliance, and one side is the sort of servants of Mordor, and so the servants of Mordor are trying to attack, and the Alliance is trying to defend them while at the same time trying to get the ring to Mount Doom. So, first time I played this, and I made an Andy level mistake.
Hang on.
So, I thought, of course, what you got to do is you got to spend dice to do things. I may be getting this wrong. It's a few years back now. So I was spending these dice to get the Fellowship moving, get them going, get a shift on Fellowship. And I kind of thought, I don't need to worry about them troops up north. And Adam just moved a whole bunch of orcs into one territory, beat me, and then goes, I've won. And we're on like the second turn of the game. I was like, what do you mean you've won? I win if I take over any of these 5 territories. It's like,
bloody hell.
Bollocks.
That's reminiscent of when you and I played Hannibal and I left Rome completely undefended.
That's what I mean. An Andy level mistake.
Yes. Accepted. Yes, I think my biggest RPG oh no was probably when Arrakis decided, I know it'd be a really good idea to try and open this really well-sealed gate to the underworld. What could possibly go wrong? And then a bloody great Barlor turned up.
See, when I saw this question, I immediately thought of the Champions of Chance D&D, and it's my RPG D&D memory that I probably will always have while I've got at least 2 marbles rolling around in my head. And it was this really convoluted plan. We were on an airship, and we had to get down to the ship beneath it. And what is it? So we had one cleric who could fly. So he was like, I'm just going to fly down. And then we had a bard who would open like a magic portal door and take the dimension door, and he was going to take the barbarian down. But then it was like, how do you get the paladin down? So they polymorphed me, the paladin, into an eagle so I could fly down. And we spent ages coming up with this plan. Typical RPG thing. Let's come up with this plan for like 30, 40 minutes. Activate it. I turn into an eagle, dive off the edge of the ship, and I get shot. Reduce to 0 wounds, and therefore immediately turn back into my human form and plummet. And that was a bit of an oh-no. And then it was Senza, the cleric cast water walk on me so that I wouldn't drown when I hit the open water beneath us. But of course that meant I hit the waves like a rock, took the full damage, and ended up. So this was meant to be like a really big boss fight thing. I ended up like 260 feet away from the boss on 3 wounds, and it took me about 7 turns to get into combat, and the whole thing. And the barbarian got stuck in another dimension, got banished.
Yeah, the barbarian got banished. I don't know how you.
And then it was.
I don't know how you did that fight. I really don't.
The bard just spent the next 7 turns just trying not to die, while the cleric flew around trying not to die, trying to make sure everybody else...
Isn't that what bards generally do in fights? They just run around trying not to die.
It was a skin of our teeth to pull the game back. But that was my biggest oh no, and I think it's my... it's like, luckily this bit is on YouTube, so if I wanted to go back and relive it, I can. But that was great. I love that. I love that game. that specific episode of the game, I mean.
I'm really struggling with this question because I know there's loads of moments when I'm going, oh, for f***'s sake. Kind of moments. But the oh no, what have I done moment, I reckon, is when my character in Coriolis ran into that hangar. And she thought she was going to, take on this entire army on her own. I don't know where I got that thought from.
She saved the day, but she died in the process.
Yeah, gave her life in vain, frankly.
Basically, so Sid's character basically went to shut some emergency airlock after a bomb had gone off. So she basically dived past and got behind the other side of the enemy. So the enemy now had a clear shot to her on his turn. I had darkness points, which are basically things I can use to make horrible things happen. I had plenty to burn. And yeah, this bad guy just shot her.
It was a crit, wasn't it? It was a
insta-death.
Insta-death crit. That was a defining moment, I reckon, in my RPG career.
It was a defining moment in that campaign as well.
It really was.
It started a period of genuine grief.
It did, yes. It did.
No, I've got one more question. How many cans of Irn Bru did Andy and Sid take home from Scotland?
None.
From Dave Wright. None?
None.
I took home none. However, I did come back with 6 bottles of original recipe.
The good stuff.
Well, why? Yuck! Seriously, let's not mess around with diet Irn Bru extra, no sugar, whatever the hell it is nowadays. I can't keep up. Original recipe. It costs a ridiculous amount of money, but it tastes right.
Yep. It reminds me of a comment made by one of my associates when I was doing my PhD. I was doing a sort of workshop demo, basically looking after sort of the undergrads. We were sort of teaching them how to do physics problems, and associates Miguel was already in there, and I walked in with a can of brew, just kind of sipping it, and he just looks at me and went, "That stuff is going to kill you."
It'll rot your teeth for sure.
Well, with Andy's sugar-filled death on the line, let's draw this to a close. Thank you very much for listening. We have been Polyhedron Collider. If you enjoyed us, give us a review or thumbs up or a star on your podcast platform of choice. Otherwise, you can find us all over the internet, Facebook, Twitter, and the BGG Guild 2726. We should be back soon, and when we do, we'll have more gaming goodness, hopefully.
Yes.
Hopefully, there's a bloody great list here we've got to get through.
Well, I've got about 4 review games came
There
this
you
week
go.
as well. So
There's definitely more games on the way.
until then, ta-ta.
Ta-ra!
Cheerio.
Bye-bye.